My name is Matthew Murphy, and this is my critical evaluation on the rehearsal process and performance of Act 315's Love and Information. Love and Information by Caryl Churchill is a play that dives into how love and information can create an entangled and diverse web of emotions in different ways. The writing style in this play gave us, as actors, creative freedom to put forward our natural instincts for what the scene may be and who these characters are. In this recording, I will be evaluating my process of finding and developing my two main characters, as well as developing myself as an actor. Firstly, I want to talk about how I felt my own presence in the room had an effect on the entirety of the play. I want to specify my input into helping other people with their scenes and how it helped free up any stale energy or connection problems they felt were bringing down their performance. The first scene I fed into was Virtual with Matt Rymel and Isabel Fryman. They discussed with Ruth during our class that they felt it was hard for them to feel a connection to their characters because they were far too focused on the lines, which, in turn, made their scenes static and made the movement seem forced. I gave them the direction to play the scene absurdly far from their intentions, and the only thing they needed to think about was desperately not defecating in their pants. The intention behind this direction was to help them move around the stage like they need to, rather than feeling like they had to on a specific line. In the final run-throughs, I seen how this direction moved them across the stage and how they were switching positions with purpose and intention, even though their intention was not defecating in their pants. Another impactful direction I gave in the class was for the scene Decision with Rhiannoth and Fraser, who were in a father-daughter relationship. They found it very hard to be able to find that bond with each other, coming to the final rehearsals, which is where I saw an opportunity to build a connection there. I asked them to sit as close as they felt comfortable to each other, and I told Fraser to repeatedly tell Rhiannoth that he loves her with meaning as a father would, and when Rhiannoth felt there was a connection to say it back, she should. As soon as she said it back, I told them to go straight into the scene, and everyone who was watching said they felt a massive difference between then and now. The intention behind this direction was to force a bond in a naturalistic way, by saying something so strong and meaningful to trigger a response. One of the major challenges that I faced with the whole play was coincidentally the lack of information given to us by Caryl Churchill. For example, there are only 2 named speaking roles in the play, even though it holds over 100 different characters. One way to illustrate this is the scene Recluse. It had one of the named characters called Mr. Rushmore, portrayed by Fraser Biddiscombe, and the only information that we were given was that the scene had 3 characters in it, and that Mr. Rushmore was some sort of celebrity. There was no indication to who was speaking at what times, or no other stage direction other than time passes. The scene for both myself and Fraser was one of the most difficult scenes to find any sort of connection with. Our instinct was that Mr. Rushmore was in a secretive homosexual relationship with another man, and the press was slowly figuring this out. But any run of the scene was difficult because the scene was originally very static. We found it very hard to find a sexual connection to one another whilst maintaining COVID guidelines. The scene didn't feel like it had a climax, and the number of unfinished sentences made it hard to find a pathway through the conversation. After multiple run-throughs of the scene, we became very unhappy with it and wanted to look at different avenues we could take to finding a way to make the scene ours. We tried to link it to one of our earlier scenes together, Irrational, but this made the scene even more static and made it difficult to play with the roles around the space. During free time, I looked at the different genres we could work with and how they link with both the whole play and the specific section. Depression was my first stop. As depression was a notable running theme within the play, this is one of the first things that I looked at. I thought about how a depressive state would affect each character and how it would bounce around the scene, but we felt that there was too many elements of comedy during the centre of the scene that depression would only be around for a couple seconds and it would be unnoticeable. It would have been a hard and useless objective to play. I then looked at comedy. I saw that comedy for myself seemed to be the biggest part of this scene and it needed to be exuberated. But I didn't know how that would be done or who I could base my character off. It was getting to the point where it became one of the most draining scenes of the play, and I could see that from all my peers when they were watching it. It wasn't until a separate student rehearsal where I was told to maybe base it off someone really camp and just really push those stereotypes and have a lot of fun with it. So, I looked at people like Alan Carr and Paul O'Grady and how they speak and act, and incorporated it with people who I know who were similar, and I delivered the character of Barry Kent. One conversation I had with Ruth that stuck with me when performing this character was that she told us she had not seen one person go over the top yet, and that is what she wanted to see. And I feel like Barry Kent really pushed me to those boundaries, and he became a very prominent and large character in my performance and within the play. He is definitely a character I will keep in my back pocket throughout my career in both film and TV and theatre. Although Barry Kent is a useful tool in my acting handbook, the only trouble about him was that there were very little methodologies that I used to fully develop him. I knew when first bringing him to the stage that he made the scene far from naturalism and Stanislavski, and he crept into the realms of Michael Chekhov's psychological gesture. But I didn't use these exercises before or after finding this character. If I had the chance to use Barry Kent once again, I would use these exercises and continually develop him. I know that I could have used more exercises and methods during this play, rather than playing to the naturalistic side of theatre. I feel as though naturalism became more of a problem than a solution in my scenes. A clear example of this for myself was the scene Fate, where I played Aidan, an older brother to his sick sister. During the earlier periods of rehearsing this scene, Ruth decided that it was possibly going to be cut from the performance as it was so confusing and gave very little room for character connection or scene development. Although the scene was confusing, Chloe Dean and I felt that there was a sense of importance about it due to the substantial amount of information provided. After reading this document, Love and Understanding by Dan Rebellito, I understood how the sections seemed to go from being comedic to melancholy, and wanted to try to incorporate this into our scene to give it a darker undertone. When deciding on my character for this scene, I found it quite difficult to make it something that wasn't as close to any of my other characters. I tried taking different direction to the scene, like not caring about anything she was saying to me, and as if I wanted to take her side in the argument the whole time. But my character was still no different. And then I concluded that maybe my character doesn't have to be so different. The main characteristic I decided to develop was the fact that he had to grow up quite quickly when he found out his sister was diagnosed with this sickness because he didn't have the greatest parents. I felt as though I achieved a mature character that knew the severity of the situation and his sister's actions. Although I gave it a naturalistic insight, if I had more time to develop him, I would take different approaches and work more towards developing a bond with my peers. I feel that my overall performance was good and gave me a chance to work on different characters and stories at the same time. Personally, I feel that if we had more time to develop our stories and work on them with more depth, we could have given an even better performance. We worked well on stage, of minimal set and props, and we definitely used this to our advantage as a small cast. But I feel as though I could have used more of the stage and had a lot more fun with my characters.